Hello friends, good afternoon and welcome to EduSite Live Lectures. Dear friends, today we are going to talk about world geography through maps. To discuss this topic, we have with us our subject expert, Dr. B.W. Pandey. Dr. Pandey is Associate Professor in Department of Geography in Delhi School of Economics in University of Delhi. Without further ado, I would like to welcome sir to our studios and request him to start the lecture. Welcome sir.
Thank you Amit, thank you very much. Good afternoon, and today's topic is world geography through map, and I'll discuss different continents, the important geographical elements which are very necessary to know. And in this series, we'll take first Africa continent today. So we'll go through the political map of the Africa continent, physical map of the Africa continent. Then you find some economic activities, ecological parameters, and from geographical point of view, many other points, topic, which will be very useful to you. Friends, Africa continent, known as dark continent. Dark continent because as compared to other continents, Africa was developed very late. And you know that as compared to the European, American, even Latin America, Asia, Australia, Africa having poor economy, traditional society, and even large number of population of Africa continent, they're poor, they're backward, having low literacy, less availability of food, so all kinds of problem, and so-called third world countries. And I would like to mention that the basic reasons behind the backwardness of the Africa continent is its extreme weather conditions, extreme climatic conditions. Climate. As we know, the determinism where nature dominates man, where man is a product of nature, living conditions of man decided by nature. So you can find in Africa continent there are dominance of the nature, and you can see the map. The northern part of Africa, the hottest place in the world, largest desert in the world. Southern part of the Africa is also desert, and both are the tropical desert. In the north, this is Sahara Desert, and known with different local names. We'll discuss it later. In southern part is Kalahari Desert. So you can see northern part, southern part, a large area affected by desert, absolute scarcity of water. No economic activities are possible except hunting and food gathering. On the other hand, the central part of Africa, including west coast, covering the basins like Zaire Basin, Niger Basin, these regions are very wet, very heavy rainfall, where rainfall exceeds more than 200 centimeter, with megathermal temperature, high temperature, approximately 28 to 30 degrees Celsius round the year, with very high rainfall. So the central part of Africa having very, very dense forest, lot of flies, mosquitoes, that is the place of sleeping sickness. So one hand, absolute dryness, other hand, absolute dense forest, humid tropical, humid climate. So both way, living condition in Africa is not good. Therefore, maximum number of tribes living in the forest, living in the desert, found in Africa continent. Friends, only South Africa and the northern part, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, have little Mediterranean effect, means Mediterranean type of climate, where you find a very, very high density. This way, you will find direct impact of geographical parameter on the socio-economic, ecological development of the Africa continent. First of all, we'll move to the political map, and I do like to say that Africa continent, see the political map of the Africa, there are 33 coastal countries, littoral countries. 33 countries having accessibility to the sea. Even then, because of extreme climatic conditions, extreme weather conditions, even having a coastal countries, except South Africa, rest of all the countries are developing and underdeveloped. They were not able to exploit the sea power. So let's see, we start journey, 33 coastal countries, and we'll begin number 1 with Morocco. So Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. Friends, this is known as this region called Matli region. There are Matli means group of the 5 countries MATLE. Morocco, Algeria, M for Morocco, A for Algeria, T for Tunisia, L for Libya, E for Egypt. These 5 countries lying along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. So these are Mediterranean countries of the Africa continent. Number 6 is North Sudan. Now Sudan is divided to parts, north and south. North Sudan. Number 7 is Eritrea. Number 8 is a small country called Djibouti. And number 9 is Somalia. So earlier, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti, including Somalia, were one piece of land, one country, which was known as Horn of Africa. Now these countries are divided. Ethiopia separated from Somalia, then Eritrea separated from Ethiopia, then Djibouti separated from Ethiopia. Now it is Somalia. If you see the map of Somalia, physically it appears like a horn. Therefore, now Somalia known as Horn of Africa. Somalia is Horn of Africa. So I repeat, number 6 North Sudan, number 7 Eritrea, number 8 Djibouti, number 9 Somalia, number 10 is Kenya. Kenya, 11 is Tanzania, and number 12 is Mozambique, and 13 are the South Africa. So these countries lies along the coast of Indian Ocean. So eastern coast of the Africa. Countries lying along the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. So Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and South Africa. These 5 countries lying along the coast of the Indian Ocean. Then countries along the Atlantic Ocean. Here I would like to tell you that these countries, because dominated by tribal communities and the keep on division, the separated countries were divided into many pieces, and Africa continent having the maximum number of countries in the world, more number of countries than Asia, than Europe, than any continent. So number 13, South Africa. Number 14th is Namibia. And number 15 is Congo, the Angola. And then find a DRC called Democratic Republic of Congo. And having its coastline, small coast which divides the Congo and Angola here. The Democratic Republic of Congo, also known as Zaire because of river Zaire. Then Congo, Gabon, Cameroon, and number 21, Nigeria. So if you come from South Africa at number 13, there come number 21, Nigeria. And then these countries, small countries, divided, separated, like Benin, Togo, and Ghana. Benin, Togo, Ghana. Then Ivory Coast, called French colony, Coste d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. Then Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Gambia, and Senegal. Mauritania, and the Western Sahara. This way, these are 33 coastal countries of Africa continent. We had started number 1 from Morocco, and all the way clockwise we moved along the coast of the Africa and have found 33 coastal countries. Now, these 5 countries are Mediterranean countries because lying along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, respectively from west to east called Metali. And these are also the countries which are called Maghreb. In geographical world, they are called Maghreb. Then countries along the coast of the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and right from South Africa to Morocco lying along the Atlantic Ocean. Friends, these countries which are along the west coast of Africa continent, this coast called Guinea, and the water body known as Gulf of Guinea. So these countries were earlier called as Upper Guinea, Lower Guinea, now divided. And for your kind information, these countries, the group of these countries, I would like to mention that these two countries were Liberia and Sierra Leone. Countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, the coastal areas are highly fertile, have been good. Grains are grown there. So these coast of these two countries, Sierra Leone and Liberia, known as grain coast, having Costa d'Ivory, known as Ivory Coast. Coast of the Ghana, famous for gold production. So Ghana, coastal area of Ghana, known as Gold Coast. And these three countries, Togo, Benin and Nigeria, Togo, Benin and Nigeria coast, these are known as slave coast. So this is the place historically well known in the world because of the slave trading. Slave trading was done from this coast. So Togo, Benin and Nigeria known as slave coast. I do like to show you, you can see the map of physical there. You can find the name of the coast like Grain Coast, Ivory Coast, Gold Coast and the Slave Coast. So the countries like Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Slave Coast, Ghana is Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast is Ivory Coast, then Siberia, Sierra Leone and the Liberia, they are the Grain Coast. Friends, apart from these 33 coastal countries, there are 16 inland countries. Inland means the countries without sea coast, countries which are landlocked like Nepal, Afghanistan, Bhutan in Asia continent. There are 16 countries in Africa continent which are landlocked countries. And I'd like to show you, I'd like to mention how to go through, know these countries. So just above Ghana and Ivory Coast is the country of Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, Mali, country of Mali, number 1 Burkina Faso, number 2 Mali, number 3 Niger, number 4 Chad, number 5 Central African Republic, then South Sudan and Ethiopia. These are landlocked countries in Africa lying north of the equator. Part of the earth north of equator known as northern hemisphere and south of equator is southern hemisphere. So these are landlocked countries of Africa continent in the northern hemisphere. Then we'll move to the southern hemisphere, landlocked countries of Africa, and this is the country called Uganda. Equator passes through Uganda, so Uganda lies in both the hemisphere, north hemisphere as well as in southern hemisphere. Uganda, then a small country Rwanda, then Another small country, Burundi. These are all tribal areas and dense forest with large number of tribes community found there. Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi. Then find Zambia and Zimbabwe. So earlier, Zambia and Zimbabwe were one country known as Rhodesia, then divided as North Rhodesia and South Rhodesia. North Rhodesia became Zambia and South Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. Then Botswana, and then finally Swaziland and Lesotho. So these are the landlocked countries of Africa continent. So this way we had covered the names of the countries, and today world economy is global economy. There's impact of globalization, and more than 94% of the global trade, the total freight of the world global trade, transported through sea routes. Friends, sea routes are very, very important for interport trading and industrial development. Lot of raw materials and processed goods are transported through the sea routes. So nowadays, ports play a key role for economic development. Interport trading are the symbol of industrialization, economic development. And this is the reason that port-based economy is growing very fast. Earlier, like in the first world countries like Europe continent, American continents, where industries were located in the interior of the continent, because then industries were based on the local raw material. And now, industries are based on the import and export. Therefore, ports are very, very important for international relation, for economic development, and for geographical distribution of world industries and economy. So you must know the name of the port. I would like to mention the names of the port. When you come to the same ways, number one, we discussed Morocco. So we have two major ports in Morocco. One is its capital, Rabat, another is the Casablanca. Rabat, Casablanca in Morocco, Algiers in Algeria, Tunis in Tunisia, and Libya. Libya is a major oil producing country, hence it's a major exporter of the oil. So have number of ports in Libya, including the Tripoli, Misrata, Benghazi, and Al-Baida. I repeat, Tripoli, Misrata, Benghazi, and Al-Baida. These are oil exporting port of Libya. And in Egypt, there is Port Alexandria, a very old port. Port Said is Port of Suez. This was established well connected to the Suez Canal. So administration of the Suez controlled from the Port Said. It is called Port of Suez. Then Cairo. Cairo is a river port. Cairo is an inland port like Kolkata. Kolkata port located on river Hooghly. Similarly, Port Cairo developed in river Nile. Then North Sudan have Port Sudan. Then Dahlak in Eritrea, Djibouti, having Djibouti port, Mogadishu of the Somalia, and Mombasa of Kenya. Friends, you know, Ethiopia and Kenya are the major producer of tea and coffee of the Africa continent. And the tea and coffee from Africa exported from Mombasa. So Mombasa is a major port famous for export of tea and coffee. Tanzania having Dar es Salaam. And you know that coastal area of Tanzania, including its islands like Pemba Island, Zanzibar Islands, and Mafia Islands. Pemba, Zanzibar, and Mafia. These islands are world famous for cloves, and Tanzania is the largest producer of cloves in the world. So Dar es Salaam is a cloves exporting port of the world, of the Africa. Mozambique have Maputo is a major port in Mozambique, so Maputo. And now see, ports are the symbol of economic development, economic prosperity, level of economic development of the country. Friends, South Africa, colony of the British, now the settlers in South Africa, having a Cretan land, South Africa, very, very rich in mineral resources, also having large-scale climatic diversity, eastern coast of South Africa having monsoon climate, western coast of South Africa having Mediterranean type of climate, and the northern part have semi-arid and arid climate. So there is a large-scale regional climatic diversity in Africa, South Africa, and it having agricultural prosperity and mineral prosperity industries. Friends, maximum number of ports lies in South Africa, ranging from Port Nolloth, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, Port East London, and Durban. So South Africa having maximum number of ports in Africa continent. Friends, we had discussed about the countries and ports. This is very, very important to know about the world regional geography through map. Any question, you are most welcome. I would love to reply your question. I will answer this and see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much. Hello friends, good afternoon. I'm going to discuss world geography through map. And in this discussion, I'll cover the different continents of the world, covering the geographical position, the ecological parameters, human dimensions, the geographical pursuits, including the physiography, drainage, climate, forest, minerals, industries, and trade. So, covering the world geography through map. So, I'll make it easy to understand, and in this regard, I'd like to take you to the Africa continent. In Africa continent, there are maximum number of countries having its distinguished features like the climatic extremity, regional spatial variations, and large scale diversity. The economic development, social development of this continent is comparatively less, and western coast of the Africa having large number of mineral resources, and these resources provide economic prosperity. And I'd like to mention that Nigeria, this is country Nigeria, where Enugu and Onitsha, these are the two world famous major oil fields of the Nigeria, and other oil fields in the northern part of Nigeria. Now you can understand the international relation between India and Nigeria, because India is the major consumer of petroleum and Nigeria is a major producer of petroleum. And you can say Nigeria is the largest producer of petroleum in Africa continent. And petroleum come through the Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt, large scale petroleum exported all the way to India. Then you find ports like Lagos, ports Accra, and port like Abidjan. Friends, I have told you that this region having plateau region and perhumid climate, tropical humid climate affected by littoral conditions. So you can say tropical humid climate affected by littoral climatic conditions. Hence, this region is world famous for veggiculture. Veggiculture means plantation farming. You will find here cocoa, cassava. Cocoa and cassava, this is the largest producer of cocoa and cassava in the world. So ports like Lagos, Accra, Abidjan, these are the major exporter of cocoa and cassava. After the ports and the political map, now I will take you Africa physical, and if you see the map of the Africa physical, this is a continent having minimum percentage of plain. You see the map. largest area is yellow color, then brown color, light yellow, and very, very less or the green color. Friends, colors are the language of map. You can interpret, you can understand the map through the colors. So, brown color show high altitude, mountains. Yellow colors represents plateaus, and green color represents plain. You can see less than 20% in Africa is the plain region, more than 80% are plateaus and hills and mountains. This is another geographical extremity apart from the climatic extremity, that the Africa having poor economy. Dark continent because resources are not well developed, people are not well developed. So, northwestern part covering the northwestern area of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, this is called Atlas Mountain. Atlas Mountain. And the southern southeastern part in south coast of the South Africa can find Drakensberg Range. Drakensberg. So, Atlas Mountain in the northwest, Drakensberg in the southeast. Then all the plateau region like Veld Plateau, Damerland Plateau, Bai Plateau, Katanga Plateau, Muchinga Mountains. They are all, because of heavy rainfall, these mountains converted to plateau. Mitumba Mountain. And this is the Ethiopian highlands. Friends, eastern part of Africa largely affected by intracontinental tectonic forces and large scale impact of the volcanism, inland volcanism. So, you can find Lake Victoria. This is caldera lake and largest caldera lake in the world. Largest caldera lake in the world. Caldera, where the crater of the volcano, active volcano, dormant volcano and dead volcano. So, when the crater of the volcano is filled up with water, it becomes lake. That lake called caldera, and Lake Victoria is the largest caldera in the world. Lake Victoria, Lake Kyoga and the Lake Tana. These are caldera lakes of Africa continent. And this is the now subdivision of this volcano, which is Margarita, Mount Elgon, Mount Kenya, Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Rungwe. See the surroundings. In between these volcanoes, this is the common crater called Victoria. Kilimanjaro, Mount Kilimanjaro is the highest peak of the Africa continent, and this is volcanic peak, followed by Mount Kenya. And in Ethiopia, Ras Dawson is the highest peak of Ethiopia. The number of plateaus lying in Sahara Desert, Ahaggar, Tibesti, Darfur. These are plateaus largely affected by wind action and have converted to the surface Inselberg. Now, I'll take you to the hydrology. In Africa continent, as I told you, that central part of the Africa, including west coast, having heavy rainfall. Therefore, the central part of Africa and the west coast having major drainage. River Congo, also called River Zaire. This is the largest river of Africa continent. And this river having second largest catchment in the world. You see, the catchment area of River Congo lies in both the hemispheres, northern hemisphere, also in southern hemisphere. And friends, this is the only river in the world which crosses equator twice. It moves from south to north, crossing the equator at Bioma Falls, and then from north to south it crosses equator, lying in both the hemisphere. After River Amazon of the South Africa, River Congo is the second largest river in the world. Second largest not only in the terms of the catchment area, tributaries, also it is the second most water discharging river in the world after Amazon. In the basin of Congo, there is almost every day rainfall between 2 to 4 p.m. Heavy convectional rainfall. All that water drain through the Congo in the Atlantic Ocean. Congo, the headwater region of Congo, also have a number of tributaries like Ule is the major tributary, Kasai, Laulaba are the major tributaries from the south, Sangha from the north, and all these rivers join Congo, where in Zaire, the river known as Zaire, and in Congo, the river known as Congo. Friends, same river having two different names, two different countries. So this is country Congo, where river known as Congo, and in the Zaire, it's called River Zaire, and you can see the map, River Zaire or Congo makes very, very big international boundary between the two countries. And very interesting that if you see the Kinshasa and Brazzaville, the capital cities of the two countries, Kinshasa and Brazzaville, Brazzaville in the Congo, Kinshasa in Zaire, these two cities are just across the river, facing each other. So this river Congo not only divides two countries, it also divides two capital cities. So Congo in the center, then River Niger is another important river of the Africa continent. River Niger, which originates from Loma Mountain from Sierra Leone, Loma Mountain, all the way it drains and it crosses international date line, 0-degree meridian. So this is the river, and perhaps you can say the only river in the world which drains in both the hemisphere, eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. and passing through Nigeria and Niger. The countries Nigeria and Niger were named after river Niger. And then it forms Arcuate Delta in Gulf of Guinea. It forms very, very big delta in Nigeria. Third important river in Africa continent is river Zambezi. River Zambezi. And if you see the catchment area, river Zambezi forms the second largest catchment of Africa continent. Its catchment is more than Niger. And large number of tributaries to Zambezi, Kubango, Okwango joins Zambezi, and it for the largest waterfall of the world, Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls lies along the boundary of Niger and Nigeria. Zambia and Zimbabwe, The Victoria Falls, like you must have heard about Niagara Falls, divides USA and Canada. Similarly, Victoria Falls divides Zambia and Zimbabwe. Then river Zambezi drain in the Indian Ocean. Another important river is river Senegal, river Gambia. Senegal and Gambia drains west, and the countries like Senegal, countries of the Gambia were named after the name of these rivers. Then you find Africa, South Africa, very important drainage of the South Africa. The western boundary of South Africa divided by river Orange. South Africa and Namibia divided by river Orange. And the boundary of South Africa with Zimbabwe and other neighboring countries divided by river Limpopo. Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique boundaries of Africa, of the South Africa, demarcated by river Limpopo. And I'd like to mention here, this is river Limpopo is the only river in the world which crosses Tropic of Capricorn twice. It crosses Tropic of Capricorn twice. And finally, now I'll move to the most important drainage of the Africa continent, which is Nile system. Nile system, river Nile, backbone of the livelihood economy of the countries like Egypt, North Sudan, South Sudan, including Ethiopia. This is the river which is lifeline of these countries, because it originates from equator. It originates from equator. Water of the Lake Victoria drains to the Lake Kyoga, and through the Kyoga it moves with the tributaries and find White Nile. Another tributary comes from the Lake Tana, Ethiopia, called Blue Nile and Atbara. White Nile and Blue Nile join At the confluence of the White and Blue Nile is the very famous city of Khartoum, Khartoum city. Friends, when river Nile passing from the Lake Victoria, Lake Kyoga, it's passing several kilometer stretch over large number of rapids. Hundreds and hundreds of the small waterfalls together known as rapids. When it forms the rapids, waterfalls, and it looks white color. Because it looks white, so called White Nile. And water coming from the Lake Tana doesn't form large number of rapids, so it looks blue, called Blue Nile. And after confluence at Khartoum, then the common name known as Nile. Finally, crossing over more than 6,000 kilometer, Nile drains in Mediterranean Sea. Friends, because of source of origin of Nile is Lake Victoria. Therefore, every day Lake Victoria lies on equator. So on equator rainfall occur every day. So same amount of water in the river Nile, there is no fluctuation. There is no impact like Ganga. We have monsoon, there is a flood, and after monsoon water declines. This is not in Nile. Same amount of water all round the year because the source of origin is Lake Victoria. So from Victoria and Lake Kyoga, Lake Tana, there is perennial river Nile passing through the longest, largest desert of the world. Even then river Nile remain perennial river because of its source of origin. Now, in the physical map, another important point I'd like to share with you that Africa known for its lakes. And friends, I'd like to tell you that there are different kinds of lakes. Lakes which are formed in the crater of volcano known as caldera lake. So we have discussed the Lake Victoria, Lake Kyoga, Lake Tana, or the caldera lakes. Then lakes are also found when the fault or rift filled up by water. They're called Rift Valley Lake, Fault Lake, and longest and the largest fault lakes occur in Africa continent. I would like to show you Lake Nyasa. This Nyasa also known as Malawi, and the country Malawi known with the name of the Lake Malawi. Malawi, also called Nyasa. Lake Tanganyika, this is longest Rift Valley lake in the world. Lake Kivu, Lake Edward, Lake Albert, and Lake Rudolph, also called Turkana. These lakes are fault valley lakes. There is a fault line in Africa continent, and this fault line perhaps is the longest fault line in the world. I'd like to show you. This is the fault line of Eastern Africa, where you find Lake Nyasa, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Kivu, Edward, Albert, and Turkana called Rudolph. This fault all the way extended, and here because of the fault there is the origin of Red Sea. Earlier Afro-Asia were one piece of land. Africa continent Asia continent were joined. Now, because of the fault, the Gulf of Aden and Red Sea are joined, and Africa and Asia now separated. Remaining after the development of the Suez Canal, now again there is a piece of land which were joined between Africa and Asia, further divided. So Red Sea formed due to the fault. Gulf of Aden formed due to the fault. And now Red Sea, Gulf of Aden connected by Bab el Mandeb. So Caldera Lake, number 2, we discussed the fault lake. Number 3, playa. Playa means desert. When a lake found in the desert, known as playa. So Lake Chad. Lake Chad is a playa lake, saltwater lake. And if you know, if in the desert there is a lake having fresh water, sweet water, then it is called oasis. Oasis, you find it along the bank of River Niger. Timbuktu. Timbuktu is oasis lake. Then you find man-made lake. Man-made lake where lakes are formed due to the dam, Aswan Dam, Lake Nasser. Similarly, here on the river Zambezi, you find this is the man-made lake. Then you find in Nigeria, Kainji Reservoir, these are man-made lakes. So find the volcanic lake, the fault lakes, desert lakes of the playa, sweetwater lake, and the man-made lakes. Friends, this is the physical map of the Africa continent along with the political map we have discussed. If you have any question and query, you are most welcome. Thank you very much.
On that note, I would like to thank sir for this very enlightening lecture, and I would like to thank you, dear friends, for watching our show. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you.